Let's build a very basic AI agent. And at the end of this video, you're gonna have all of this in a public workspace for you to download and use right away. Hey everyone, Sterling here. Today, we're gonna build our first AI agent using two APIs, the New York Times API and Hacker News API. And in this case, we're gonna grab all that information, have an agent summarize it for us, and pass it out as an MCP server. Now, as I said earlier, all of this is gonna be available in a public workspace, and you're gonna have access to it. All of that will be linked in the description down below. And with that, let's dig in. Let's build our first basic agent. Now, I'm doing this as a foundational aspect of this series. I want to just build an agent that gets me the top news from around the web. So in this case, I have the New York Times API and I have the Hacker News API. So I want to grab all of these. I've already ensured that they are working. The API keys are there. That is in another videos. If you need to see setup for that, you can go see some of Postman's other videos. But in this case, I'm going to assume that you have an understanding of how to make a request inside of Postman, and you see all the APIs, you've got all the variables and everything that you need. So this is going to be a little bit more advanced, but it's going to focus on Postman Flows. So I have my APIs. You can see that they're all working. And if I hit them again, they bring up new APIs or they have a new response. In this case, I'm going to go to Postman Flows. Now here on the left-hand side, I've already created a folder for this, and I'm going to do a news agent. So we're going to create a new flow module. And in this flow module, I'm actually just going to go right back to my collection, and I'm going to drag and drop the New York Times API right onto the canvas. And it's going to assume it's going to grab the environment. I'm going to just send. And in this case, now I'm going to output this as we'll just say New York Times top stories. Okay. Now let's just run this and make sure that it's all working. Oh, looks like we got a fail. Great. So the problem here is we know that the status goes to 401, which is, let me open up the body and you'll see invalid API key. So the API key doesn't actually exist. So what we'll do here is I'm going to pull in the API key. If we add the environment and it goes to prod, we should have no problem grabbing that once again. Okay. So we've got a success, and we can take a look at that. If we look at the body, there is the results. We've got 29 results here. We'll just go to the first result. And I am doing this in technology. I'm not going to do this in anywhere else. I just want tech news. So it looks like everything is going great. Cool. So let's ship this as a snapshot. And if you're not familiar with snapshots, this allows us to actually use this flow module in other flows. So that's a pretty cool thing. I'll show you how we're building all of this. So I'm going to create this as a snapshot. And now this is shipped. Let's call this New York Times top tech stories. There we go. All right. So that's in my flow. Now I'm going to create another flow module. In this case, I'm going to now get the Hacker News. So let's create a new flow module. Now, Hacker News is a little interesting. So this is where the foundational steps of building a flow and a flow action are going to come in. With the top news stories, this is just an API call, and I can do other stuff with the API call. That's great. But with the Hacker News, the difference is when you get the Hacker News, they give you just an array of all of the stories. They don't give you anything else. So back in the flow module, I'm going to drag and drop the Hacker News in. Now, when I run this Hacker News, I get an outcome, and that outcome is going to be a body, and it's going to have a whole list. So I only want the top 10. So in this case, the cool thing with flows is when you have the success here, or when I have anything in this output, I can just drag and drop that onto the canvas. And now I'm ensuring that I only want body coming out of this. We know that we've got a lot coming here, and I only want the top 10. So from here, we're going to drag and drop, and we're going to make an evaluate block, and we're going to just slice the top 10 off of these. So I'm going to call this body just so we have a variable name, and we'll go body.slice 0, 10. And we're going to run this once again. That should give me a result of the top 10 So 0 to 9. Perfect. All right. So now from there, the Hacker News item API is going to get me, so given an item, I'm going to then, it's going to go get the top news story for me. So what I'll do here is I'm going to create a for loop inside of all of this because this is an array. So we're going to grab a for, and for every item in this list, we're going to loop over. Now that means I'm going to take this item. I'm just going to drag and drop this right onto the canvas here. And for each one, I'm going to add, let's grab the item. So we'll go item. We're just going to pass that item into the API. Now that we've done our for loop here, we're going to collect it all. So inside of Flows, if you run a loop, you have to collect it all. And it's a little different from JavaScript or TypeScript, but this is how, because that way, once you're running it, you can run a lot of loops and you just collect everything at the end to pass out in one singular form. So let's do a collect. Now that we've collected all these items, we should have something here. All right, it's running. It ran through all of those. Now we've got a list, and each one of these has a body. Looks like we've got Valorant's 128 tick servers, and we've got the URLs. We've got the information from it. Okay, cool. Now that we've collected all of this, let's just output this. So we're going to go here. We're going to type output, and that output is going to be hacker list. Okay, so that's going to be the output of this flow. Now, what we'll do is we're going to create another snapshot. This is how I can use this in other flows. So let's go back to flows, and now we're going to create a flow action. And this is the flow action that we're going to deploy this and use this as an MCP server. So I'll create an action. And in an action, there's a few things different than a module. In an action, this is going to treat it like a request. So you're going to have a request in, you're going to have whatever you're sending into your request. So you can have a body, and then you can have a response. If you don't want it, if there's nothing in the body, you don't need to worry about it, no worries. So in this case, I'm just going to delete this. I've deleted this, and now I'm just going to add the flow modules onto this canvas. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to add a flow module, and this is going to be, let's do the top 10 news stories here, and we're at another flow module, top 10 hacker news here. Okay. So what we have here, anytime I change the flow module, you're going to have to redeploy it or give it a new snapshot. Once that new snapshot, I have to come back here and make sure I'm up to date on the newest snapshot, or I can keep it on an older snapshot. And this is really good for version control. All right. So we're going to just run this, and I'm going to run all of this at the same time. So as soon as I get something in, I'm going to pull all of this in, and I should be able to get all the top news stories tech news stories from the New York Times and the top news stories from Hacker News. So let's just run this really quickly and see what happens. Okay. It looks like I already got something back here, and I can see, and there it is. So I've got results. There's all the top news stories. Those are the results there. And I can see what's coming up from Hacker News. I've got the top news stories from Hacker News. So before I do this, to make this really truly agentic, I'm going to ask the agent to combine it all. And I'm just going to add an AI to do all that. So we'll right click, and I'm going to add an AI agent here. And in this case, take the top news stories from the top tech news stories from the New York Times API and the top news stories from Hacker News, and provide combined list with titles and links that I can follow. All right. So in this case, we're just going to add the news stories here. So we're going to add context 1, and we're going to add context 2. Now I can just add these here. So we're going to say New York Times, and we'll call this context 1, and we'll say, let's see, Hacker News, and we'll call this context 2. All right, so then from there, we're going to run this once again. Okay, so now I've added the context. Now let's try this all over again. So it'll run. It's going to get the hacker. It's going to get top news stories from New York Times. It's going to take a moment for hacker news. And let's see what the result is. Now, because this is going to go to an MCP server, theoretically, I could just pass out both lists and just let the LLM eventually just parse it. But in this case, I'd actually like to see what the AI agent can do here. Okay, it looks like something's going on. So let's actually just stop this and see what happens. Oh, actually, it came back. So let's see what the result is. Here's a combined list of the top news stories. I've included all top news. And let's see. It looks like we've got everything. Let me see what the input was. Context 2, it didn't get anything. Because I went from done to here. So let's delete that and let's pass in context 2. All right. And in this case, I'm going to not use GPT-5. Let's go to GPT-4.1 because it's just a simple task. I'm just trying to add everything. So let's run this all over again. New York Times came back. Hacker News is going to come back. AI agent on GPT-4.1 is going to run through all of it. It's got the input. You can see input is input is context 1 and context 2. And maybe what I'll want to do is take the body out of this. So if I come back here, I'm just going to drag body out onto the canvas. Yes, this is still running and that's okay. We'll just let this run and do its thing. But then the next time when I do this, I'll drag the body from the body output to context 1. That way it's body on both. Okay, so we've got that. Here's a combined list, top news stories from the New York Times. Okay, we know those. And let's see, top news stories from Hacker News. So here's the top news stories from Hacker News is coming in. All right, so let's clean that up again real quick. We've taken the body out of here and we'll pass that to context. And now in this case, let's just pass that out. There we go. So when we when we want to deploy a flow action as an MCP server, there's a special condition that we can do. So if we go into deploy up here and in the action URL, this is typically just the URL that you're going to get. So I could call it, this could be top news stories, right? And now anytime I get that, that's going to be the path that's there. However, if I put in tool definition, I need to spell it right. Okay, if I type in tool definition, this actually converts all of this into an MCP server that I can use. So let's deploy. And now you're going to see that the URL that I'm going to get is going to come in. Cool. So now let's take this. I'm going to use this URL and I'm going to now open the, let's add it new and let's go to MCP. And I'm just going to paste this in and let's connect. So now it's actually connecting to the flow as an MCP server. So what we should see here in a moment, and there was one thing I forgot. So when we're here and inside of the body, we need to define what the tool is. So just for everyone can know, I am going into this folder right here. Let's open this up and create an MCP server with Postman Flows. So I can create an action. In the action, create a scenario and name it tool definition. And in there, we're going to claim the body and we're going to name it. And so let's go back in scenarios. We're going to create a scenario. We're going to call this definition, tool definition. And in the body, we're going to call it tools. And we will give this an array. And in that array, we're going to have the tool calls. It's an array of objects, and it's going to be name, and we'll call this top news stories from around the web. All right. And then we'll have a description. This tool provides the top tech news stories from the New York Times and Hacker News. Okay, so we're going to redeploy this. Okay, now that we've added the tool definitions into the scenario, now this works. So I'm going to open this up. We're going to go back to our MCP here, and now if I connect to it, I should see no tools were found, which is fine because we have not added those tools. But I should be able to just run the flow without doing anything else. So let's test it. So something that I missed earlier, and the reason why this was broken, and I just double checked all of the documentation, and I needed to have input schema, input type of an object and properties, and then redeploy it. So now that it's been redeployed and I've gone in, you can see I'm on active snapshot 3. It now has an MCP. And so when I come back to here and I reconnect, it now gives me the top news stories. So I can run it. And now this should run the entire tool call for me. So this is going to run the entire flow, and it's going to give me something. Action. Uh-oh, something did not work. What is it? It's the APIs, the API keys. So this is also something I'm learning about flows, is that when you have an environment, it's not going to come all the way through to the MCP server. So let's go through, and I'm going to make a API key for the environment for the New York Times. So we're going to go back in here. Where is our top in here? So we have prod. This is how we're getting it, but we need to have an API key. So for the sake of this, I'm just going to drop my API key in as a variable, and I'm going to import it. So I'll be back after I do all of that. But to show you how I set that up, we'll go to text, or we're going to call it a string. And then I'm going to do create variable. So we'll call this New York Times API key. And in here, I'm just going to get variable, and we're going to call it New York Times. So from here, I'm just going to run this over to the side, and I'm just going to drop my API key in here. And there's other ways to do that, but in this case, this is the way I'm going to do it here. Okay, so I added the variable. It's over here on a variable up here. So let's just run it again. Let's just make sure it's working. Now we're going to create another snapshot. That'll be snapshot 2. So when I go back to my handle API action, we want to pull snapshot 2 from here. So let's make sure we got the latest snapshot. And now we've got all of this in these scenarios. Let's redeploy this again. So now that's going to be snapshot 4, and it looks like it's all working. So from here, let's disconnect from here. Let's reconnect, and we're connecting it. Let's run this and see what happens. Oh, but the HTTP status period out. There we go. Okay. So I forgot in here, we need to add a timeout for this. Let's see. It is scenario edit. We need to have this run for 60 seconds. So let's just go in here. Let's fix this up. There's the 10 seconds. So let's add that. Let's make that 60 seconds, which is the longest it can go. It won't take that long. Actually, let's drop it to 30 seconds. Redeploys the new snapshot, and it's been deployed. We'll disconnect, reconnect, and send it again. So this should work within 30 seconds. Still having that timeout period. All right, so let's come back over here. We'll deploy this, and we'll add that to 60 seconds. Deploy. But then I want to just double check and see how long this is really taking. So we're going to test this. We're going to run this with scenario. There's nothing that we're doing in. We'll start in 3, 2, 1. And let's see how long it takes to get all of this back. All right, 5 seconds. This AI agent might be taking too long, in which case what I might do is just combine them and just send out all of this and let the LLM do its thing. All right, so it did come back within 45 seconds. So let's see what happens again. We'll deploy this one more time. It's deployed. Let's disconnect and we'll reconnect and let's run it and see what happens. We shouldn't have a timeout, but like I said, HTTP has a max of 60 seconds. If our flow is going to run longer than that, we need to come up with other solutions, and there are solutions for that. But that's for another video. All right, so we've got content type of text, and we've got text. Here's like my top news stories from the New York Times. Let's see, and the top news stories from Hacker News. So we've got Hacker News down here. Let's do it a nice preview. Oh, preview is fine. This is going to be just fine, but it's got all of the links to everything, and I can click on it. So we'll just pick one of the top news stories. Valorant, where is it? Command click, that'll take us to the new tab, and you can see there's the update. Very, very cool. This is the easiest way to make a server and an MCP server using Postman Flows. You can make an agentic workflow, or you can have it run a lot. I know there's a lot of talk about Canvas style building, but in my mind, when you've got all of your APIs in one place and I want to make all these different calls, I can do them synchronously, I can do them asynchronously, and I can do them and I can manipulate the data and I can ship it all out. Now, the next step, this is just the news, but the next step is actually using this in practice to build an API status checker. Can't wait. That's the next video in this series. As always, hit that like and subscribe button if you found this helpful, and we'll see you next time.